Welcome back, dear viewers, and you are still watching The Breakfast Show. And in this segment of our program, we will talk about Egypt's foreign policy and its success 10 years after the 30th of June revolution. And now we are joined over the phone by Ambassador Hussein Haredi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good morning, Mr. Ambassador.
Good morning, ma'am.
So, sir, how do you see Egypt's foreign policy 10 years after the 30th of June revolution?
Well, I guess it's a successful foreign policy. It has served the national interests of Egypt, and also it has served and defended the national security of the country in the face of a multitude of challenges. Foremost among them was terrorism,
Yes.
whether in the northeastern part of Sinai or along our joint borders with Libya. On the other hand, during the last 10 years, we have succeeded in forming alliances with various countries, whether Arab countries or Mediterranean countries and in Africa, in order to advance our shared interests.
Yes.
And then, of course, Egypt, during the last decade, has succeeded in forging balanced relations with the super and the great powers in the world. And I guess the Egyptian foreign policy in the last 10 years have been quite responsive of the changes taking place in the international system, where this system is transitioning from a unipolar world to a multipolar world. And we have, in this transition, and transition periods are difficult and are challenging themselves, but Egypt has steered its policies wisely and farsightedly.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, also if we talk about how do you assess the impact of Egypt 30th of June revolution on region's political landscape and instability?
Well, definitely what had happened in Egypt back in 2013 was a turning point for the Middle East, not only for Egypt, but for the region as a whole. From 2011 to June 2013, the region was in the throes of an offensive on the part of the Muslim Brothers and their partners and allies in the region and in some capitals. And what happened in June 30th was that the Egyptian people had put an end to this wave of unrest and insecurity. And in fact, the whole region had breathed a sigh of relief after the success of the June revolution. Now, afterwards, of course, the region has regained a certain level of security and a certain level of political stability, but still, the many countries in the region are facing economic challenges. But of course, these challenges have been really have been made difficult by the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, and before that, the outbreak of the COVID pandemic. But the countries in the region, and among which, of course, figures Egypt, have been trying to overcome the problems associated with these two major destabilizing developments.
Yes. Mr. Ambassador, also Egypt has succeeded in restoring diplomatic relations with many countries, like Turkey. Yesterday we exchanged ambassadors. We have seen many successes on the foreign policy levels and also with Qatar, many other countries. So what's your take on this?
Well, of course, honestly speaking, after years of mayhem in the Middle East, in the wake of 2011, the uprisings in several Arab countries in 2011, now, or almost 2 years or 3 years ago, the countries in the Middle East have come to the conclusion that they should turn the page of what's called or has been called the Arab Spring. And it started, of course, with the certain opponents on the part of the Turkish government towards Egypt and other powers in the Arab world, namely Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. And then, of course, the reconciliation among Arab and Gulf, the 4 Arab countries, they boycotted Qatar in 2017. And this reconciliation that was sealed in the Arab Summit or the Gulf Summit in Al-Ula, Saudi Arabia in January 2021. So this is the whole region now is in this context of reconciliation, and of course, and this context comes, of course, the exchange of ambassadors between Egypt and Turkey on the one hand, and on the other hand, the re-establishment of diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So, in sum, I guess the Middle East has turned the page and is entering a new phase. And let's hope, madam, that the next phase would be, we'll see more security and more stability and more economic prosperity for all the people and the countries in the Middle East.
Yes, finally, one final question, Mr. Ambassador, about Egypt's relation with the African countries. How do you evaluate the 10 years after the revolution?
Well, of course, we all remember that in the wake of the June Revolution, the African Union hastily suspended the membership of Egypt in the Union, in the African Union. Yes. And of course, this decision came as a complete surprise to the Egyptian people. But by the time President Sisi assumed the presidency in June 2014, I guess Egypt regained its membership, and almost 3 years later or 4 years later, Egypt exercised the presidency of the African Union from 2019 to 2020.
Yes.
So now, I guess Egyptian-African relations are back to normal, and Egypt has really has been paying great attention to the expanding these relations, promoting these relations, and we have seen that President Sisi has visited many African countries, and some of them was the first time an Egyptian head of state does this. Like, just to give you 3 examples, in Ivory Coast, in West Africa, Angola, and Mozambique recently in the southern part of Africa. So Cairo has been really working hard on promoting its relations with African countries. And during the presidency of Egypt of the African Union, Africa signed the trade agreement, the second largest trade agreement in the world, and and we hope that it really would reflect very positively on African economies.
Yes. I'd like to thank you, Ambassador Hussein Haredi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Thank you, sir, for being with us. And by that, dear viewers, we come to the end of today's edition of The Breakfast Show. Thank you for watching.